okay? Okay. So, I don't know, however, how many of you were inside earlier today. It's okay, you don't have to be. But I want to broaden some of the concepts that I was thinking about and look at it from a bit of a different perspective, but I think it's important because it touches our lives directly. Really touches our lives directly and how it is that we live. The entirety of Tish'a BeAb can be looked at, and would appropriately be looked at, as a process of achieving ourselves as a nation. So, we leave Israel, we're ready to become a nation. We come into Eretz Israel, and it's a series of downfalls. Really, we have very little time in Eretz Israel at all that is strong and prominent. The Achamim see the reign of Shlomo HaMelech as being the pinnacle. And that was like, a roller coaster that when you get to the top, you're already on your way down. Because what happened with Shlomo was that on the inaugural day of building the Beit HaMikdash, he married the daughter of Paro, which was an issue. Not the least of which, that it was Mitzrayim that he was marrying. And so it was very ironic that we were coming out of Egypt in order to be able to become a nation and ultimately achieve a Beit HaMikdash, and the king marries the daughter of Egypt. Now, doubtless, he was intending on trying to rectify those, whatever issues were there. The Achamim say that at that point the city of Rome was founded. And it only built up steam until finally, 2 Batei Mikdash later, it destroyed the second Beit HaMikdash. So our time as a nation, for all intents and purposes, has been a series of becoming rather than being. And the reality is that's essentially the nature of our lives. Because when we think about our lives on this world, as long as we're here, we have what to become. And it is that becoming that ultimately is why we're here. Because it's a question of how completely and fully we build our souls. How developed we become as the people that we are. And when we do, we can be HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But ultimately our life is set up for those purposes. So I want to look at Tish'a BeAb from this perspective. And the Achamim preempt it. The Achamim look at it from this perspective. And they do it with a very nice play on words. Because they take the Megillah of Tish'a BeAb, which is called Megillat Echad, and they say that that word goes all the way back to the very beginning in terms of Adam HaRishon. And that is simply where HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns to Adam HaRishon and asks him, Ayeka, which is the same letters as Echad. So that's the perspective that I want to approach it. Because for those of you who've studied with me before, whenever we think about that, I've taught this many times, this whole issue of Adam HaRishon and Ayeka. We always look at it as God asking Adam, can you tell me your coordinates of life? Right? Can you tell me where you belong in life? But I want to look at it differently this year. I want to suggest that another way to look at it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to Adam, genuinely, where are you? There is a human that I created, and I can't find you. Why wouldn't God be able to find Adam? What would that point be of asking that question? Of turning to Adam HaRishon and saying, where are you? I mean, we know he's hiding behind a tree, right? I mean, that's how the story goes anyway. So, okay, God's looking for him. But obviously, you don't need to be too far advanced to know that God's not actually looking for Adam physically. And that the question of Vayekar is God asking, where have you gone? Where are you? And the only reason that, the only reason, I'm hearing myself 14 times, it's all right. The only reason that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would ask that question, where are you, I can't find you, is because he's gone somewhere in terms of his own existence. That as he scans, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu scans for the human that he created, he doesn't find him. Now, it's important to understand that anything that happens in that story, as far as we know, and as far as we're concerned, is a story of the primal nature of humanity. Which means that it tells us always, everything in that story it tells us something about the nature of the human condition. What it means to be a human being. So if that story, if we take that story to its greatest conclusion, right, that point of God asking, where are you? That means that we can lose ourselves. But it also means that God comes looking for us. So the losing ourselves part we kind of all have an idea of. But to know that it is expected that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should come looking for us, that's a very important part of the story. And so he does. And Adam calls back to him. And he says, I was afraid to show myself in front of you. Because I know that I did something that didn't meet what you had in mind. So I want to pause for a minute and think about this. Right? Adam HaRishon is lost. God comes looking for him. Adam responds, I was hiding from you because I was afraid. Because I did something that didn't meet up to how you expected. So we are meant to read that story in terms of our own lives. We're not meant to read that story as a history. We're meant to learn from the story, as we're meant to learn from every single story that's told to us in Torah. But this one is the first one, which means it's the foundational story. It is the story upon which all the other stories of the Torah are based. And if I don't know that story, I don't understand all the others. Because I don't see the other stories of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, the children of Yaakov, in their struggles, the nation of Israel, in their struggles, answering that same question that HaKadosh Baruch Hu poses to Adam HaRishon in their attempts and works and struggles to answer the question and ultimately achieve their being again. So the questions on Tish'a BeAb are painful, and you'll forgive me for asking them, but I think that we have to ask them before sunset. One of the things that we think about on this day is, where have I lost myself? That's the first thing. Whether we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking for us is another one. We'll wait for that in a moment. But the first question is, where have I lost myself? And for most of us, even with the young adults that we have, it happens very early in life. But early. When we're very young. It starts the first time that I realized that I didn't meet some expectation. And so the minute that I realized when I'm very young that I didn't meet some expectation, I have a story going on in my head. It starts. It may be a very short story to begin with. By now, we probably have like full novels, right, about ourselves that are entirely false, that we have been telling ourselves for some years. There is not one person in this room, myself included, that doesn't experience that. So I'm speaking openly because I don't believe for 1 minute that there's a person in this room that this doesn't apply to. It's part of the human condition. very early on. And when that happens, pain happens because we realize that we have fallen short and we hide behind the trees. We hide behind the trees. And we tell ourselves, and this is where the major issue is, because we have exposed ourselves and been hit as a result of that exposure, however we've been, we then become fearful to ever expose that part of ourselves again. And so there's the challenge. Most of us are too young to think about it the way that we need to think about it. If we have people who are older than us, who love us, and recognize that that's what's going on, because sometimes it's very difficult to recognize what's going on, they help us out. But otherwise, if we expose a part of ourselves at the time that we're very young, we act as we are. And we get pushed back because of it, for whatever reason. What do we do to that part of ourselves? What do? We sequester it. Hopefully we don't bury it, but it's possible. But we close it off. So the word I like to use is sequester, which means to quarantine that self, so it can't really be exposed. Why? Because you don't want to have to express yourself to the pain, again, of exposing yourself and being hit. We all do this. Every single one of us. We sequester. And we draw our cues from everyone else around, from the world around, to tell us whether it's safe to have it or not have it. And then it's just a question. Now, the thing is that for most of us, it's cruel and unusual punishment. And most of the time, it's child abuse. Because much of the time, it's a child that's being sequestered. Or a young person that's being sequestered. Yes? Sheepishly nodding. Most of the time. We would not do that to our younger siblings. We would not do that later in life to our children. We wouldn't do that to someone else's children. We would recognize it as wrong. We might even recognize it as cruel. And yet, when it comes to doing it to ourselves, we allow it. What does it have to do with Tish'a BeAb? God comes looking for that child. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes looking for the element of that human being that he created. And that's there. And he asks, Ayeta, where are you? And if there's no real answer, and most of the time, early on in our lives, there isn't one, because we're just not ready to answer that question. There is a process of extraction that happens. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't take those things lying down. And he doesn't take those things lying down for one reason, because he loves. If you were him, you wouldn't take it lying down either. In other words, if it wasn't you that was doing the sequestering of the child or the young person inside, if you saw this happening to someone else, would you sit down, turn away, or would you get up and say, I'm looking for this kid that I've lost, and I don't know where he is. She's gone away. So what are we supposed to do? Do we pretend that we never knew that person? Or do we go out and find that person and do what we need to in order to be able to get them out? Now, this is a crazy thing. I know it sounds crazy. But this is the story of our lives. Every single one of us. To a greater or lesser degree. It's the story of our lives. It gets to a point in life sometimes and for some people, that we forget what that child was, who that child was, and all of the elements that that child brought. And we suffice with something else. So that's an interesting coping mechanism that we have, because it's not just, remember, that part of ourselves, it never goes away. It's always there. It's just sequestered, held back. And that means that there's an aspect of ourselves that is empty, that's missing. So how do we fill it? How do we fill it? We fill it either with being something that we are not. Artificial representations. We will draw from all manner of people and try to act in a way that we think that people that are accepted act. Right? It's okay, you don't have to nod your heads, you know that. That's what we do. Until we realize that it's not sustainable anymore. Because it has nothing to do with who I am. There's a kid locked up somewhere that needs to come out and be able to ultimately be and express and mature into a full and whole human being. There's other things that we do, because the missing part of ourselves also creates pain. And so we do things in order to be able to cover that pain in many, many, many different ways. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu always comes knocking. And that is one of the most important parts of the story of Bereshit. That yes, Adam HaRishon listened to the Nahash, which is inside of us, which I'll get to in one moment. He listens to the Nahash, he listens to the snake, and he gives in, and he essentially sells out himself. What he knew he should be and could be, he sells out. But the point of the story is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes looking for him. And that is the most beautiful part of the entire story. Even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response is, it's time, you know what? You're going to have to take some time away from home. So we look at that as a punishment. And in our vernacular, it may very well be a punishment. But does a loving parent not punish? In the sense that I'm going to help you rediscover who it is that you are and who it is that you need to be. It may not be pleasant, but it's going to do the job. And not only that, the elements of it that aren't pleasant are going to build us. I see DJ nodding his head. It's going to build us. So, on Tish'a BeAb, the question of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where are you? No matter how old or young we are, there's an aspect of you that I created that I don't find. Why are you holding it back? Why is it sequestered? Are we afraid of it? If we're honest with ourselves, yes, we are. Is it not true that there are parts of ourselves that we're afraid of? Don't look at me like I'm crazy. Is it not true that there are parts of ourselves that we're afraid of? We're afraid of letting it be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes knocking. Where is it? Give it a chance. Give it a chance to learn. Give it a chance to grow. Give it a chance to adjust. As a matter of fact, don't call it it. Give him, give her a chance. So the whole issue of Tish'a BeAb is bringing us through the trials that are necessary in order to be able to extract the sequestered self. I know, it's a very elaborate description of Tish'a BeAb, but it's what it is. It is the series of processes necessary to extract the sequestered self, so that we could stand tall and answer Ayeka with Hineni, here I am. Instead of, she did it, which is the initial response. The entire goal of Maaseh Bereshit is for the human race to be able to stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, Hineni. For Yisrael to stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, here I am. Full-fledged. So what do we need to do in order to be able to get that, be that, be open to that? The first is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes knocking. And you know how he does it? In the form of life. Because he flows through all of it. Ve'ata mechayeh et kulam. Don't we say it in the tefillah? Ve'ata mechayeh et kulam. You give existence to all of it. Not just the living things, all of it. There is no existence without HaKadosh Baruch Hu powering existence. The powering of all that is comes from the source of all being that we call HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'ata mechayeh et kulam. Male'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. The entire earth is filled and held by you. So all of it, everything that we see and everything that we know, the entire universe, all of the galaxies, is surrounded by him and enlivened by him. Filled with the force of life. You can see it in a person's eyes if you look. You can see it in your own eyes if you look. Look. It is an unmistakable presence. And so it happens through the flow of life. That's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes knocking. And every event of our life is an opportunity for growth and development and becoming full and whole and giving permission for the sequestered elements of ourself to come out and take their place within us. Every event of our lives, big and small. Because there are plenty of events in our lives throughout the day that shock us, no? I mean, small things. Small things. You realize you put the wrong socks on? That was just me a few days ago. Small things. You put too much salt in food. Small things. Those kinds of things. Those things shock us. And why am I bringing up those things, which seem completely negligible? Because you know what the Hachamim say about the flow of a person who's connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? They don't really get many of those things. I'm going to explain why, but that's one of the things that they say. They say, you know, you put your hand in your pocket, you take out the change that you need. You don't have to sit and find, then get stuck in the pocket. Don't have to worry about all that. Then realize that you don't have to change. Those are negligible things, but they are all part of the flow of life. And when they don't work out for us, they shock us. It might be a little tiny shock, but they shock us. And in one instant, it tells us life's not helping me right now. No? Yeah. I mean, if we're being honest and truthful, we recognize that life's not being helpful for me right now. There's other bigger things. I'm sure we can all bring our stuff to the table and say, what's your bigger things? We all have them. Big or small or whatever it is. But the bottom line is, life shocks us all the time. And it is the flow of HaKadosh Baruch Hu through life that is doing that. It's life itself that runs divine. And our interactions. And so what do we do when it shocks us? There's the question. Because the elements of life that really bring us out, that really help us, that really open us up and allow for us to grow fully and completely strong so that we can say, Hineni, are the ones that we don't like, want, or ask for. Those are the ones that are the biggest and most powerful ones. Just happens to be. Which is why, no, Adam HaRishon didn't really want to leave Gan Eden. That was the best thing he ever did. Because he would have otherwise been hopelessly locked in his state of stunted growth. What is it? He would be content and stuck, but not really whole and builded and grown and full. And so it's those little shocks themselves as well that are meaningful, because when they happen, it's a question of how does it relate to it. So here's the thing that Israel contributed to the world. I hold. And I say that because our people have been doing this far longer than almost anyone else on this planet. Meaning, our people have been thinking about these things, fighting with these things, working with these things, long before any human beings even thought of what it meant to live an examined life. Meaning, to be able to examine your life from the outside. It wasn't even a known concept among human beings that one should examine one's life. So it's in our name, Israel, which means Sarita. Torah says, your name is Israel, Sarita im anashim be'im Elohim v'tucha. You fought and you struggled with humans and with God, and you were capable. It's in our name. Because the question then becomes, now that you're out of the garden, and you are exposed to the shocks of life, what do we do when we experience them? We become warriors. We become warriors. And Israel are warriors. That's what the name means. It's what we're called. Warriors with the help of God. So what is the craft of battle? In other words, what is our weaponry? What is the weaponry of Israel that allows for us to be able to liberate the sequestered elements of ourselves and of the world? Two things. Two things. Truth and love. They are at the core of what it means to be honest. Rabbi is posek love le'halacha. How do I know? He says that how do you know that somebody is part of Israel? What do we know about the members of Israel? That they are loving, compassionate people. That's not to say that there aren't loving, compassionate people in the world. It's that it has been a cornerstone and hallmark of our people from our inception. That we have hearts that beat and respond. And so he gives an example of this, because he says that there was a group of people in Eretz Israel that were called Netimim. These were people that came in, dressed up to Yehoshua ben Nun and the people of Israel at the time, pretending to be people from a far-off land, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu had commanded them that they were not allowed to make any covenants with the people in the land. And so, these people who live in the land, are natives of the land, they dress up as though they come from a far land, they form a covenant with Israel. And so now Israel finds that they have to take care of it. And they had them in a city with Kohanim, Nov, the city of the Kohanim. And Shaul HaMelech, for a long story, Shaul HaMelech comes in because he thought they were harboring David HaMelech at the time, and he wipes out the city. And these people come back with a vendetta later on to David, and they say because because Shaul did that to us, to the city, took out our city, we were left as poor people, we don't have anything left anymore. We want the children of Shaul killed. And they insisted on it. And they ended up carrying out, and it happened. And it says that it goes out of its way to say that they were not Bnei Israel, that these people were not from Bnei Israel. Why? Because they maintained a vendetta for years and years and years and insisted on watching people murdered in front of them in order for them to be able to be happy and get, go over, as we would say in Hebrew, to get on with their lives. So the Pasuk goes out of its way to say, Lo Bnei Israel. The Rambam says, why does it say that? It says, because Israel is never that way. Never should be that way. And where their hearts are so hardened that they hold vendettas and grudges and are willing to see people suffer just to see people suffer. It says, Lo chen b'nei Israel v'libam hanachon, and their hearts that are set properly. And so for us at our core, it is a question of truth and love, and those are the tools that we use in order to be able to fight. Truth how? We constantly are verifying. That's what we should be. Using processes to verify reality and my choices in my life. Am I being true to myself and to the world that I live in? Or am I telling myself stories? Why would I tell myself stories? Because the alternative is too difficult for me to deal with, or it's painful for me to deal with. So I tell myself stories. And I rationalize the choices that I make. I project onto reality things that aren't there so that I'm more comfortable living in it because it looks like the way that I want it to look. So that I can maintain that person that's inside sequestered, deal with the emptiness that I'm feeling, live an artificial life, and run through. But it never works, it never holds up, and at the end we have no person to speak about. And we are never able to answer the question of Ayeka. It's a question that hangs and lingers for us always. Truth is our warfare. It's the craft of our battle. And the way that we use it is to constantly verify. And how are there some ways that we can verify about our lives and the world we live in? What are some ways? It's an unfair question. How do I know that what I'm thinking is correct about myself, about my friends, about my life, about the world? Is it simply because I think it? In other words, if I think it, does it mean that it's true? We think that sometimes, but that's, on a sober day, we'll tell you, no, I know that's not necessarily true. I can tell it in my friends that it's not true, just because they think it's not necessarily true. Right? So I know that just because I think doesn't mean that it's necessarily true. So how do I figure out if what I'm thinking is true? There has to be some process of verification. So one of the ways that we are prompted to verify is that we get shocked. It's one of the ways that life does it to us. It's like, wait a minute. I wasn't expecting this. And usually what we do is we immediately try to either rationalize or recover. Recover literally means we cover it up again. Right? We either try to rationalize or recover and figure out a reason why it's all okay the way that it's going. Instead of stopping for a minute and using an opportunity of shock to be able to question, well, what am I feeling right now? And why am I feeling this right now? And here's the key. This is the tough one. Because there are plenty of shocks that come to us and where we're upset with ourselves. Yeah? I forgot whatever I was supposed to bring with myself this morning. I didn't make the appointment that I was supposed to make. I didn't make the call that I was supposed to make. I didn't return the call that I was supposed to return. I didn't live up to what I was supposed to live up to. Big things like, I wasn't parenting the way that I should have been. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. So if we go back to those moments of shock, or those moments of pain, which is what we do today, isn't it? I mean, isn't that the whole of Tish'a BeAb? That we pause instead of rationalizing and instead of projecting false realities and living in them. Isn't today all about stopping, going back to the painful moments and questioning, what does it mean to me? How do I feel about it? What am I telling myself as a result of not having it? Is this making sense? Yeah? You hearing me? Isn't that what we're doing today? I mean, ideally, isn't it what we're doing today? It's one of the reasons why we don't like this day. Because who wants to do that? Yeah? Who wants to sit on the floor, open up a book, and start talking about the painful past? Let me pick up every single painful event that happened to me over the last 2,000 years. That's fun morning. And yet that's what we do. You're going to tell me that Israel is not brave and courageous and interested in being everything that it can be with a day like Tish'a BeAb? Who else? En masse, nationally, is doing this. At least in the ideal. Yes, plenty of us don't show up for Tish'a BeAb. We're just not interested. Or we do whatever we can to numb it away. Watch whatever we can, sleep through it, whatever it is. Like, look, we've all done. Hello. I've had 41 Tish'a BeAb. I'm telling you, it's not. You sleep through them. You watch whatever. What you do. But as you mature, and we realize that being in the pain is important, and not just being in it, feeling it, and thinking what it is that I tell myself when I feel it. Because that's the crazy thing. If you try this, you will see. The next time something happens like that, and it's going to be soon. It always is, right? You can't get through it. Next time, stop. And think two things. Number one, what am I feeling? What are the emotions that are coming up? Write them down. What are the emotions? Number two, what am I telling myself? What kind of person? And you'll find all of these interesting things. Write them all down. I always forget them. Really? You always forget. Always. Is that true? Well, not always. Okay, so that's false. But you will tell yourself that story over and over, and you will convince yourself you are not somebody that forgot something. You are a forgetting person. Is there a difference? Massive difference. Massive difference. One shuts away a whole element of self. Another recognizes a flaw and addresses it and sees it in the light of reality. Our first weapon as warriors is the weapon of truth and verification. And the first thing that verification does is allow for us one step closer to saying, Hineni. As opposed to dialing ourselves down, locking ourselves away, trying to do what it is that we think we need to do, living all number and manners of artificial lives that are not us, do not work, and everybody sees through it anyway. Number two is love. And with that, what time am I done? Huh? Thank you. No, really. What is it? No, serious. I'm serious. The number two is love. Oh. Hang on. No, I don't understand. It's okay. I just want to remember. Number two is love. There are two aspects to it. Both of them difficult. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes knocking, it's always coming from love. He wants to know where it is, where that human being is that he created. And he's going out looking for him. He's going to find her however long it takes. Until that human being that he created emphatically fights back after every shock, after every pain, after every event that tries to crack the partition that has been put up to keep that person away, until that person finally says, leave me alone for the last time, kicking and screaming, to the point that they have to actually destroy themselves. Now, Kadosh Baruch Hu is not leaving anyone alone. That's written in the Nevi'im. Lo yachpotz b'met harasha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not interested in anybody dying, not even the Rashayim. Ki im b'shuvo midarko. Just to return from his path. That's the path of destruction. When we said earlier, the whole return is return to oneself. And ultimately, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki im b'shuvo midarko v'chayan, so he could live. It's what Bruria tells her husband, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, Yitamu hata. Rabbi Meir doesn't say it, she says. Rabbi Meir says, you know, these people, they're doing all these hataim, I can't stand them, I really wish they went away. And Bruria says to Rabbi Meir, don't wish that they went away, wish that the sins went away. It's the problems, it's the mistakes that are causing all of the issues. How do I know that? She says, she quotes him a pasuk. Only Bruria. She was great. She quotes Rabbi Meir a pasuk. It says, Yitamu hataim min haaretz. Which means that the transgressions, the misdeeds, those should leave the land. Not chotim, not the people who do them. He says, you know, I got it. It's a good point. And he does. But that's the issue. It's never the person itself. Unless that person has emphatically chosen not to live a life and to live a life counter to everything that is alive and good and strong. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to come knocking and ask, Ayeka. And this day is a day in where we try to answer that question by stripping away the numbness, right? By stripping away the comfort, stripping away the blockades that we build in our lives, so that we don't have to feel that question coming to us. And we actually sit on this day and go back. I'll tell you where I went. You know where I went? It was that time that, there was a talent show in school. And I actually tried it. And it was a flop. And everybody was laughing. Yeah, that cut a whole portion of me out that day. You have a kinah for that? Yeah, I probably could write a little kinah for that. Oh, how horrible it was. I went up on stage, make it rhyme, whatever it is. Fill in the blank. Fill in the blank. Because that's what this day, that's really what it is. And if you think that it's only supposed to be national, think again. It is an individual day. And where I go back to the painful moments and I have to answer, where am I? I'll tell you where I went. That day that I walked in and I was talking to my teachers and I said something stupid and they laughed. And I was embarrassed. And so I made sure never to open my mouth again. How many stories? You know what I'm talking about. Or when I was playing ball with my dad and I threw the ball wrong and he was laughing at me. Come on, don't you know how to throw a ball? Should I bring up more? You get the picture. That's where we lost ourselves, and that's what we do today. So the element of love is crucial, because what we tend to do is we project when we're in pain. We project our anger and our upset on who? A whole bunch of other people, but who do we really do it to? Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu. We assume that he's out to get us. We assume that he looks at us as a mess. And that he looks at us and says, can't you get your stuff together? I mean, how long do I have to wait for you? You can tell me that I'm wrong? We don't think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu that way? We're not taught to think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu that way? And yet everything that we do and every pasuk in the Torah practically tells us the opposite. All Moshe Rabbeinu talks about for the last 30 days of his life is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us. Does he mention the problems? You bet he does, only in hints to them. The opening of the book. He make sure to list everything that we did that wasn't right. But he hints to them. Yeah, he understands that. Why? The dignity of the people. What, are you going to shoot them down and destroy their dignity by telling them over and over again every bad thing that you did? It's the most beautiful opening to the book. Devarim. So it opens. You know what happened with Ba'arava. Remember Moab? Midian? That's the opening of Devarim. So Hachamim say, why don't you just say it outright? The most beautiful perush. Why did we say it outright? Because Kivodan Shel Israel, that's why. Because of the honor and glory of Israel, that it shouldn't be harmed and damaged by having to constantly hack away at what we know it, I know what you did, you know what you did, you know that I know that you know that I know what you did. Leave it at that. Now the question is, how do we move forward? And all Moshe Rabbeinu talks about in the entirety of Sefer Devarim is Ahava. You know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't listen to Balaam? Because he loves him. You know why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu bring you to the heart? Because he loves you. So here's the thing about love, and it's an aspect of love that we don't think about often. Most of the time when we think about love, we think about us loving someone. And I'll talk about that in a second. We don't usually talk about letting someone love us. Because we don't think that's ever a problem, do we? But it is. It is. Because you know what happens when you sequester yourself and you have stories going on in your head about your own inadequacy and how you don't measure up and how you can't even answer the simple question of Ayeka and say Hineni because it's so hurt and damaged and put away. You know what goes along with that? Very often what goes along with it is the feeling that you are not able to be loved. That we are not able to be loved. And so when people love us genuinely and truly, oftentimes we don't let them. Because we use the same walls that sequester the parts of ourselves to keep those people out. And to keep the act of love out. It's heavy, but it's a heavy day. Let that sit for a second. We have to think about when that happens in our lives. And I will say as a caveat, not everybody who says they love us does. I'll just throw that out there. But I'm talking about true loving. When someone genuinely is prepared to love you, let them. A strong, whole, powerful person has the strength to allow people to love them. It takes strength. Because it takes a feeling and sense of self-worth that I am worthy of love. And I'm telling you, it is what makes all the difference. Literally, it's what makes all the difference. Because if for whatever reason, even in our most quiet minds, we feel that we aren't worthy of love, we don't let people. Because to remove that wall is too dangerous. It's the reason we put it there in the first place, remember? It's dangerous. Who knows? But guess what? This is the difficult part. It's the only way to do it. All love takes risk. Always. Because you don't know how the person is necessarily going to act, or how necessarily it's going to mean, what it's necessarily going to mean to you. And that brings us to the other end of it, when we love. When we love. We will not love. Why? We don't know what's going to happen on the other end, and what will it say about us. We don't know if the person's going to accept it, not accept it. Embrace it, not embrace it. Allow it, not allow it. And it gets difficult when you try to love and try to love and try to love, and you keep being met with this. Yeah. So it's a tough thing because it goes back and forth. But that's the other element of our fighting. It's the other weapon of the war that we rage in terms of being able to become everything that we can. There's truth and there's love. There's serious things. The greatest among us are never afraid of the truth and never afraid to love. And it is those people who can embrace Tish'a BeAb. Because we hear the love from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we're still here, able to live in it, and to move forward, to think about the reasons why I can't answer ayet, but I want to. And that I will listen to the truth and feel the love of the day. And ultimately, we walk out of Tish'a BeAb being willing to listen to the truth and feel the love in our lives. And when we can do that, even begin to do that, life opens up. Because we let HaKadosh Baruch Hu flow. We let him in. Because we can keep him out with the same walls. It's just that he knocks much harder, and he doesn't take no for an answer. He's got all the stamina in the world, so it's easy. You just keep going. He doesn't give up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always ready to take the relationship to the next level, and he's always ready to keep going. Always. And so those are the things. When we allow ourselves, when we give ourselves permission, when we are courageous enough to listen to the truth and allow for the love, life opens up. You can take it to the bank. I'm telling you. You can take that advice to the bank. It's not easy, but I'm telling you, you can take it to the bank. You write to me if you think it's not working. Your life opens up when you allow yourself. Because it allows HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And as it says in the pasuk, the most beautiful pasuk, and listen how it's phrased. We say it every day, we don't even realize what we're saying. It's the most beautiful pasuk. Harofeh lishbure lev. You know how you talk about a broken heart? We think that's a modern term. It's Tehillim. It's the first place we hear it. Harofeh lishbure lev. We're talking about a God who heals broken hearts. Who doesn't have a broken heart? If you're locking some part of yourself away in a closet, you have a broken heart. And he binds up with bandages our sadness. What is the next part? Counts the stars. What have to do with it? I'll tell you what Ezra did. He calls everyone by name. What does that tell me about HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There's nothing insignificant in this world. Certainly not us. Then all of a sudden it talks about Nitchei Yerushalayim, because it sees that not only in terms of our own selves, but in terms of our entire nation. Because we don't have a home. Truth and love are the tools of the warrior of Israel. They always have been, and they always will be. Take up the weapons that are rightfully yours, that are your legacy and your inheritance. Use them. And read what your forebears have told you, because they've been through the war. And they have written down for you all of their stories, and all of their thoughts, and all of their trials, and all of their errors, and all of their triumphs. They've written it for you. Listen to them. It will empower your life. They've been writing for 3,000 years about this war and what they know about it. And so they've never been afraid to tell you about their failures, because they knew that you would learn from them. And they've never been afraid to tell you about the love that they've lost, because they know that you would hear it and know and identify with it. And they've never been afraid to tell us all of the trials and triumphs that they've gone through, because they knew that you would be here fighting. And they wrote it for you. In the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the Ketuvim, in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, in the Midrashim, and all the way down till today. That's what the Torah is for us. It is the guide to get through. And ultimately stand before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wait for him to say Ayeka, and you stand and say Amen.